It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to see all of you online. I was looking over and looking at photos of Maizumi Roshi and Bernie Glassman over on the Ancestors altar over there, which is a very high standard indeed. So my name is Ryoshin. I'm an assistant teacher here at the Village Zendo. Happy to be speaking to you this muggy summer morning. So when I was casting about for a topic for today's talk, I was drawn to a koan that I've always liked. It's case 40 of the Blue Cliff Record, Nan Ch'uan's It's Like a Dream. As with many koans, the meaning that we find in a koan can change based on where we are in our practice and what's going on in our life. So this koan points to an obstacle that we can fall into in our Zen practice, where we become attached to emptiness. We want to attach to a feeling of bliss and samadhi, and cut ourselves off from fully experiencing our lives. But rereading the koan this time, I found that it also speaks to other types of attachment, other habits of mind, where we're not fully present. And so I think it offers a rich opportunity to just really examine whether we're intimate with our life. How intimate with our life are we actually in this moment? So let me recite the koan for you. As the officer Lu Xuan was talking with Nan Ch'uan, he said, "Master of the teachings Chao said, heaven, earth, and I all have the same root. Myriad things and I are one body." This is quite marvelous. Nan Ch'uan pointed to a flower in the garden. He called to the officer and said, "People these days see this flower as a dream." So in the first part of this koan, Lu Xuan remarks on a sentence that he read in one of the written teachings of a Zen monk called Sen Chao. And Suetu, who compiled the Blue Cliff Record, tells us in the commentary that Chao lived in the late 4th and early 5th centuries and was recognized as a great teacher. He studied Chuang Tzu and Lao Tzu, the great Taoist teachers. And at some point in his studies, while he was copying out, there's a practice where we that copy sutras by hand with an ink and pen, and he was copying the Malakirti Sutra, which is actually our study text this summer, and he had an enlightenment experience. And after this, he realizes that these teachers that he had been studying before, Chuang Tzu and Lao Tzu, were not thoroughgoing. There was something they were missing in their understanding of the Dharma. And so he compiled all of the scriptures and wrote 4 written discourses over the course of his life. And so this officer, Lu Xuan, is reading one of these written discourses. And he was overjoyed to discover that in Seng Chao's writings, there was a passage that echoed his own experience, his own deep feelings. And that passage was, heaven, earth, and I all have the same root. Myriad things and I are one body. Now, Lu Xuan was a diligent student of Nan Ch'uan's, Nansen in Japanese, and he had experienced for himself that self and other have the same Buddha nature, with no gap. And we may have had that same experience, perhaps when we're sitting in zazen, in a retreat. So we're sitting for many, many periods, for many days, have a chance to get really deep into samadhi. And then the bell rings, and we're one with the bell. And we stand up, and there's no thought, we just stand. Our legs are aching, we turn around, we dust off the cushion, and we stand in Gasho. And I find the koan interesting because Nan Ch'uan's response seems to suggest that Lu Xuan is missing something. Nan Ch'uan says, people these days see this flower as a dream. Other people see this flower as a dream. So is he referring to other people and saying that Lu Xuan actually gets it? Or is he referring to Lu Xuan when he says, people these days see this flower as a dream? So let's dig into this a little bit. So one thought that I had is that, well, when we're dreaming, we're not awake. And our conventional wisdom tells us that what happens in our dreams is not real. I actually understand from my own dreaming that, the dream state is the free play of our unconscious. And psychologists believe that dreaming is an important part of sort of processing all of the things that are going on in life, and it's not necessarily a premonition of something that's going to happen. It's just our minds, our brains kind of processing things that have gone on during the last day or maybe earlier in our life. But it's not real. So I think that when Nan Ch'uan says people see this flower as a dream, he's commenting on an aspect of our mind, an aspect of how we go through life not being fully awake. Now, the commentary on our Zen practice is he might be observing that sometimes we as Zen students, if we've experienced a taste of samadhi, we want to hang on to it. And we don't like it, actually, if there's something that happens that drags us out of that blissful state of samadhi that when we're sitting on the cushion. We want to hang on to this oneness. So we can get attached to it, just like we can get attached to anything else. We can get attached to equanimity, to samadhi, and not truly experience what's going on in our lives. Maybe our significant other actually is talking to us when we're sitting there in perfect samadhi, ignoring what they're saying. So it's possible that this is what he's commenting on. It's a kind of Zen sickness, actually, this getting attached to oneness. We get attached to what we think we're supposed to be as Zen students. Oh, everything's all one, man. Right? We're supposed to be filled with equanimity, loving kindness, unmoved by the ups and downs in our lives. What are you bothering me with this stuff that happened during your day? Leave me alone. I want to sit in oneness right now. Are we caught in a dream? Sometimes. Sometimes we are. We check out of our feelings. We close ourselves off to what we feel. And when we do this, we miss the joy of experiencing the beautiful flower and the sadness that comes with its fading. It's just a dream. In reflecting on this for today's talk, I find myself reflecting on how much of my life I've gone through like I was living in a dream. Not fully awake, not fully present. I'm aware of the many stories that I've told myself over the years. A lot of it was what the Buddha called I-making and my-making. In my head, spinning notions of who I was and what I'm doing. I had my agenda and nothing else mattered. Living in that dream of my agenda. Sarah has told me how many years she noticed the summer solstice alone because I was working on a paper, or because a budget forecast was due, or because my boss had given me a deadline for an assignment, and I wanted to do a good job. And I missed the summer solstice. June 21st just passed me by. It's also very important, those stories that I was telling myself. I was talking to a friend the other day who has I think his eldest son is in his 20s. And he doesn't know, he has no place in the world. And some of it is due to his attachment to social media. And he talks to his father about how he doesn't have that many followers and how nobody likes his posts. And he doesn't feel he has a place in the world. His father doesn't know how to help him. So he's living in Instagram dream, or a Facebook dream, or a TikTok dream. It's actually kind of sad. I don't know how to help him talk to his son about this, other than to help him realize he does have a place in your world, at least. He has a place in your world. You care. Tell him that. So many people are living dreams. People out there living a MAGA dream. Stolen elections. Democrats running this country into the ground. Living a dream. And in a way, this is really no different from being attached to oneness, being attached to the Dharma, as opposed to actually being present to what's going on. Oh, I'm a Zen student. I'll tell you how you're supposed to live because I'm so wise. Right. Instead of just being a friend, listening to what you have to say. How much of my life am I still going through living in a dream? How often do you sit down for a meal and really taste everything? Really chew every bite? First thing I do when I sit down to a meal at home is I grab the newspaper or I grab my phone. So I'm kind of doing one thing with one hand and another thing with the other hand. Not paying attention to what I'm eating. If we go on retreat, sometimes we'll have oryoki, where the purpose of the ritual, the entire purpose of the ritual, is just to experience eating together. That is it. To help us understand what this reality is like, because we find so many ways to escape from it. A Buddhist teacher once said, "To be a person is to be asleep." The teachings tell us that there is no fixed self, but we perpetuate the notion of a self, and we construct our lives around it. Some of you know that since I retired, I've been playing at writing fiction. Nothing's published yet, so sort of just playing at it. But since I've been writing fiction, I think it's possibly the only time I'm actually doing honest work. Because when I'm writing a story, it's completely made up. And I can spend hours living in my head and admit to myself that that's what I'm doing. It's really honest work. And then I come back to reality. I enjoy living in that dream, whatever that story is that I'm making up in my head. So this is how I understand Nan Ch'uan's teaching. But the imagery of being awake and of dreaming in Buddhist literature is rich. And this koan also reminds me of a verse that comes at the end of the Diamond Sutra. And that verse goes like this: "All composed things are like a dream, a phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. This is how to meditate on them. This is how to observe them." course, this verse points to the transience of all things. All composed things means all things that are conditioned to arise, exist for a period of time, and then disappear, just like our lives. The principle of dependent co-arising. Everything we experience is like this. Things appear to be solid and permanent, but in fact, they're constantly changing and impermanent. All dharmas are without self. We chanted it in the Heart Sutra just this morning. The Diamond Sutra is the teaching of emptiness, and it's also the teaching of how to live our lives as bodhisattvas. As bodhisattvas, we vow to save all sentient beings, while recognizing that there is no one being saved and no one who is saving. In the Diamond Sutra, it says that a bodhisattva practices generosity without relying on any object, any form, any sound, smell, tactile object, or dharma. How do we practice generosity? We want to measure it, right? We want to take a tax deduction. We want to get praised for it, or at least we want to praise ourselves for it. Oh, I'm such a good person, giving away these clothes that I'm never going to wear again. What's that measuring coming from? So it's hard to conceive in the way that we think of generosity in Western society what this means, that a bodhisattva practices generosity without relying on any object, any form, any smell, tactile object, or dharma. Just give it. Because it's needed. Even the Diamond Sutra teaches, even with respect to the teachings, it says there is no state of mind called the awakened mind. And the Tathagata, which is another name for the Buddha, it's the name that the Buddha used to refer to himself. And the Tathagata gives no independently existing teaching. He teaches no independently existing thing, because the Dharma that the Buddha taught cannot be realized or spoken of. There's nothing to attach to. All composed things are like a dream. At the very end of the Diamond Sutra, it says this, and I'll read. It says, if someone were to offer an immeasurable quantity of the seven treasures to fill the worlds as infinite as space as an act of generosity, the happiness resulting from that virtuous act would not equal the happiness arising from a son or daughter of a good family who gives rise to the awakened mind and reads, recites, accepts, and put into practice the sutra and explains it to others, even if only a gatha of 4 lines. In what spirit is this explanation given? Without being caught up in signs, just according to things as they are, without agitation. Why is this? Because all composed things are like a dream, a phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. This is how to meditate on them. This is how to observe them. So this is a different interpretation, a different perspective on Nan Ch'uan's comment. In this dream, we are fully present with both the joy and the heartache of being alive. We are intimate with it all. This intimacy reminds me of the Zen poem, Zen poet Isa's most famous haiku. This dewdrop world is a dewdrop world. And yet. Isa had a very difficult life, both as a child and throughout his entire life. And when he was a child, a school teacher noticed his unhappiness and suggested that he learn to write haiku, because this would allow him to express what he was feeling. The Dewdrop poem was actually written after the death of Isa's 2.5-year-old daughter. And before this, his firstborn child had died during childbirth. This dewdrop world is a dewdrop world. And yet, this dewdrop world is vanishing at every moment. It's as if it's a dream. And yet we're hopelessly attached to it. The direct and intimate realization of impermanence and no self are what allow us to be fully present in this world and in this life, and to act in accordance to what is needed. And it's this realization that's the antidote to living in a made-up world of oneness, or whatever other fiction we might tell ourselves about who we are and what the world is. And so one last example that I had as I was pondering dreams is a child's nursery rhyme. Probably all know it. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. So it's meant to be a happy song for children. I think there's a teaching, even in a nursery rhyme. How should you go through life, little child? Our life is to row the boat. Or, referencing another koan, our life is to beat the drum. How must we row it? Gently. Why? Because it's all fading away at each moment. So let's appreciate each and every moment. I'll leave you with a short verse. Heaven, earth, and I have the same root. Myriad things and I are one body. This is really quite marvelous.